If you're over 70, there's a truth about friendship that no one says out loud. Not your doctor, not your family, not even your oldest friends. But hospice nurses know it. People who work with the elderly every single day know it. And once I say it, it might sting a little. Here it is. Most seniors are emotionally exhausted, not from being alone, but from pretending they still enjoy friendships that no longer feel real. Let that sit for a second. We don't talk about it because it feels cruel, because we're taught that friendship is always good, always meaningful, always sacred, especially if it's lasted for decades. But I've spent years in hospice care, and I've seen the truth behind those long relationships. And honestly, some of the loneliest people I've met had the busiest social calendars. They weren't alone in the room. They were just completely unseen. Friendships after 70 are different. They don't work the same way they did at 30 or 40. They shift, and not everyone shifts with them. I've sat beside men who kept going to the same card group every week, even though they dreaded it. They'd come home tired, annoyed, and quiet, but they'd go again, because it's what they've always done. One of them told me, "I don't enjoy it anymore. I just don't know how to stop without feeling like a bad friend." That's the trap. That's the illusion. We think loyalty means staying, even when staying slowly eats at our peace. I met a woman named Elsie, 78, widowed, sharp, and fiercely independent. She told me something I never forgot. She said, "I'm not lonely because I'm alone. I'm lonely because I'm still having conversations that no longer mean anything." That line broke me a little, because I know so many people over 70 who feel the exact same way, but stay quiet. Why? Because we're told that if you drift from a friend, you're the problem. That old friends are treasures. That time equals trust. But here's the truth, time doesn't equal connection. Presence does. And that presence changes with age. Your energy changes. Your needs change. Your tolerance for shallow talk changes. You start craving depth or quiet, not obligation. But most people don't know how to talk about that without feeling guilty. So they keep showing up to lunches they no longer enjoy. Keep answering calls that leave them more drained than filled. Keep telling stories they've already told 100 times. And deep down, they start to disappear. Not physically, emotionally, bit by bit. Now let me be clear, not all long-term friendships become hollow. Some grow deeper with age. Some become the only space where you still feel fully known. But that's the exception, not the rule. More often, what I've seen is this. You keep the friendship alive, but lose pieces of yourself to do it. You start holding back how you really feel. You stop being honest. You become who you used to be, not who you are now. And sometimes, that's the loneliest place in the world. I've watched seniors light up when a new neighbor moves in. Someone who doesn't know their history, doesn't expect old stories, doesn't carry old assumptions. Just a clean slate, a fresh chance to be who they are right now. That's when I realized, friendship in later life shouldn't be about how long it's lasted. It should be about how honest it still feels. If you're over 70 and feel this quiet exhaustion after a phone call, if you've ever ended a visit and needed to sit alone to breathe again, you're not broken. You're just done pretending. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop calling that loyalty and start calling it what it is. Emotional survival. Most people don't realize how much energy it takes to keep a friendship going. When that friendship no longer fits who you are. It's not the lunch. It's not the call. It's the pretending. Pretending to still enjoy it. Pretending to still feel close. Pretending it still brings you comfort. And that pretending is exhausting. I've seen it too many times. Seniors pushing through social events like they're clocking into work. They show up smiling, polite, engaged, and then they go home and sit in silence, wondering why they feel so drained. It's because they're performing, not connecting. There's a word that comes up a lot in hospice care. We call it emotional dissonance. It means your outside doesn't match your inside, and the gap between those two slowly wears you down. One patient said it perfectly. She told me, "I go to lunch with them every week, but I leave feeling more alone than when I got there." That's the kind of loneliness no one warns you about. It's not being without people. It's being with the wrong people and not knowing how to walk away. Sometimes it's friends from the past. Other times it's family. You love them, but you feel like you can't be yourself around them anymore. So you keep smiling, nodding, laughing at stories you've heard 100 times. Meanwhile, your spirit is whispering, "This isn't working anymore." But you stay, because they've known you for years, because you're afraid of hurting them, because starting over feels too late. Let me say this clearly. It's not too late. It's not too late to be honest about what no longer fits. It's not too late to let go of the expectation that you must keep every relationship alive just because it's old. And it's not selfish to want peace. It's not rude to want quiet. It's not unkind to say, "I need something different now." One woman I met, her name was Rose, said this after turning 82. "For decades, I kept friendships because I was afraid of being alone. Now I let go of them because I've learned I'm okay with myself." That kind of shift doesn't come from books. It comes from truth. And sometimes the truth is this: you've outgrown someone, but you still care. You still love them. You still wish them well. But you no longer feel at home in their company. And that's okay. You don't have to burn the bridge. You don't have to make a scene. But you do need to stop betraying your own peace to keep others comfortable. That's what so many seniors do. They trade inner peace for outer politeness. They keep showing up, keep saying yes, keep holding space that no longer holds them, until one day something breaks. Sometimes it's health. Sometimes it's a quiet emotional collapse. Sometimes it's just a moment where you look in the mirror and say, "I don't recognize this version of me anymore." That moment matters, because that's when you get to choose. Not out of anger, not out of drama, but out of clarity. To choose peace. To choose real connection, even if it's smaller, quieter, fewer. To choose rest over routine. If you're still here, feel free to leave your thoughts below. I read each one with care. And if any of this speaks to something you've felt, you're not alone. There's something I've never said in public until now. Something I've only shared in private, behind closed doors, with other hospice workers who've seen what I've seen. It's this: some friendships are harder to grieve than death. Because when someone passes, you get to say goodbye. You get closure. People check on you. They bring you food. They give you space. But when a friendship fades, slowly, quietly, no one prepares you for that. No one gives you permission to hurt. And no one gives you the words to say, "I miss what we had, but I can't keep pretending we still have it." That's the grief no one talks about. The grief of emotional disconnect. Of showing up to a conversation that used to make you laugh, and now just makes you tired. One man told me he was 76, still sharp, still active. I've known him for 40 years. He was my best friend. But these days, I hang up the phone and I feel nothing but pressure. Pressure to keep being who I was back then. That line hit me hard. Because so many seniors feel this, but they blame themselves. They think they're the problem. That they've become cold. Or distant, or too picky. But the truth is, they've changed. And that's not something to be ashamed of. You're allowed to outgrow conversations that once fit you perfectly. You're allowed to no longer enjoy what you used to love. You're allowed to sit in silence instead of re-explaining who you've become. I once sat with a woman named Grace. She was in her early 80s. She'd been diagnosed with cancer, but she was lucid, aware, sharp as ever. She told me about a friend she hadn't seen in months. I used to call her every Sunday, for years. But after my diagnosis, she just stopped knowing what to say. So she filled the silence with small talk. And I couldn't take it. I didn't want to talk about the weather. I wanted someone to ask me how I'm really doing. I asked her if she ever said that to her friend. She shook her head. No, because I didn't want to embarrass her. But every time I hang up, I feel like I've been in a room where I wasn't allowed to be myself. That's the part no one sees. How many seniors are walking through deep emotional landscapes, but still being treated like everything's fine, because their friends only know how to talk about the good old days. Sometimes those days aren't good anymore. Sometimes the stories are heavy now. Sometimes the memories bring more pain than comfort. And it's not because you're bitter. It's because you've been through too much to keep pretending that every call has to be cheerful. I want to tell you something that might set you free. You don't owe anyone your performance. You don't have to smile through every visit. You don't have to take every call. You don't have to carry the weight of keeping people comfortable while your own soul is starving for honesty. There's a kind of power that comes when you finally say, "This friendship no longer reflects who I am." Doesn't mean you don't love them. It doesn't mean you wish them harm. It just means you're done performing. You're done being polite at the expense of your own peace. And yes, it's scary, because we're taught that ending a friendship is a failure, that letting go means you've given up. But sometimes, letting go is how you finally return to yourself. I've seen people on their deathbeds who asked for just one person, not the childhood best friend, not the coworker they saw every week, but someone who met them exactly where they were, without nostalgia, without obligation, just presence. Real, grounded, quiet presence. Sometimes that presence comes from a nurse, sometimes from a neighbor, sometimes it comes from within, from you, finally sitting with yourself and saying, "I'm not going to pretend anymore." Here's something I've learned from years of watching people at the end of life. The most meaningful connections don't always come from the people who've known you the longest. They often come from those who meet you in the exact moment you're in now. Not the past version of you, not the cheerful version, not the strong version, just the real you as you are today. One of the most surprising things I've seen is how quickly a stranger can become the most trusted person in someone's final days. I've watched it happen. A quiet volunteer, a new neighbor, a hospice aide who only met them last week, but sat beside them with no expectations. And that stillness, that presence, it breaks through years of surface-level familiarity. Because it's not about how long you've known someone. It's about how safe you feel with them. You see, when you're over 70, safety means something different. It's not about physical protection. It's emotional safety. Can I sit beside you and not have to explain myself? Can I show up tired, or quiet, or unsure, and still feel like I belong? That's real friendship. That's what so many seniors are longing for, even if they don't say it out loud. I remember a man named Frank, 83. He stopped going to his weekly men's group after his wife passed. When I asked why, he said, "They meant well, but all they wanted was the old me, the one who made jokes, the one who organized the potluck. But that man's gone, and they didn't know how to sit with the one who's left. So instead, he started walking in the mornings, alone at first. Then he met a woman who walked the opposite direction. They nodded, then said hello. Then eventually they started walking together, slowly, quietly, not saying much. After a month, Frank told me, "She doesn't expect anything from me. That's why I keep showing up." That line stayed with me, because at a certain point, that's what we all want. Not constant entertainment, not history, not shared photos or holiday plans. Just someone who lets you be. No pressure, no memory lane, no reminders of who you used to be, just now. So many seniors are afraid to let go of old friends because they think it means being alone. But what they don't see yet is that letting go makes space. Space for someone new. Space for something softer. Space for your own peace to return. One hospice nurse told me about a woman who asked to see her hairdresser during her final week. Not her daughter, not her best friend, her hairdresser. When they asked why, she said, "She lets me talk about now. She doesn't try to fix me. She just listens." That's what we often forget. People don't want advice. They want to be seen, not for who they were, not for who others wish they still were, but for who they are right here, right now, with everything that comes with aging, with grief, with change. And sometimes, that level of seeing can only come from someone outside your past. Someone who doesn't have a script. Someone who doesn't need you to perform. Someone who doesn't say, "You used to be so," but instead asks, "How are you really today?" You don't need dozens of friends after 70. You need a few people who meet you where you are. And if that person hasn't shown up yet, that's okay. Because the most important one who needs to meet you there is you. When you reach a certain age, you start realizing that peace isn't found in full rooms or long guest lists. It's found in silence that doesn't demand anything from you. In conversations where you don't have to explain your pauses. In company that doesn't flinch when you change. In a life that finally lets you be. I've met hundreds of older adults, some deeply social, others deeply private. And here's what most of them have in common. They are not tired from being alone. They are tired from pretending they're not. Pretending to enjoy things they don't. Pretending to still relate to people they've quietly outgrown. Pretending to be grateful for relationships that only leave them more hollow. So they stay quiet. They smile. They keep the calendar full. But inside, they are waiting for permission to stop performing. Let me be that permission. If you've changed, let the relationships around you change too. You're not obligated to stay connected to people who no longer see you. You're not cruel for wanting silence. You're not broken for feeling more peace alone than with old friends who no longer meet you where you are. You are simply becoming more honest. And honesty, at this stage of life, is more precious than any polite tradition. It's okay to drift away. It's okay to say no. It's okay to sit with fewer people and feel more seen. One man I met in hospice, his name was Louis, told me this on his final morning. He said, "My biggest relief wasn't that my pain medicine worked. It was that I finally stopped trying to be the version of me everyone remembered. That's the quiet freedom no one talks about. Not having to live up to your history. Not having to perform for your past. Just being present. Even if no one else understands. Even if it means fewer people in your life. Even if it means starting over emotionally at 72, or 84, or 91. If you've been holding on to a friendship just because it's old, this might be the moment to ask yourself if it still honors the version of you you've become. If it does, keep it. If it doesn't, let it go gently, not with bitterness, but with respect. Because what once served you doesn't have to follow you forever. You get to change. And your connections get to change with you. If this kind of quiet reflection feels helpful to you, you're welcome to come back anytime. I'll be here. No pressure. No performance. Just this space where truth is safe, and your silence is enough.